Chaitanya, good to have you on the podcast, finally.
Thanks, Aneesh.
Well, you said you don't hear any podcast that you're on. I hope that changes with this one, man.
Hopefully, we'll brave it out.
So, today I want to decode Gully Gang. I have so many questions. I want to find out more about how things started, where things are going. I'm personally a very big fan of what you guys are doing. So, yeah, super excited about that. But before we get into Gully Gang, what's your story?
Okay, wow. I've been into music since, a very young age. When I was in school, I was that guy who would, that person who would, be the person who recommend music to other people, burn CDs on Mozart and bring it to school and sell those CDs as well. Obviously, that music was coming from LimeWire at that time.
Oh, man, wait. We need to tell Gen Z what all of this is.
LimeWire was the unofficial Spotify back in the day.
Yeah.
And anyone and everyone with the curiosity in music would download, it's a P2P sharing app, peer-to-peer sharing app. And you would download that. Sometimes you would give your computer all sorts of diseases to download like an MP3, but that used to be the shit back then.
Yellow-green icon.
Yeah,
those were the
like a lime icon. Yeah. And that was actually technically my first venture also, selling
CDs.
selling CDs of uncleared, copyrighted music. But yeah, so music was always, something I was naturally attracted to. At one point, I took up guitars as well, wanted to sort of, I was influenced a lot initial years by a lot of classic rock and metal and so on. And I wanted to take up guitars. I wouldn't say I was a very good player, to be honest. It was more of a hobby for me. Then in college, what I ended up doing was I had a lot of friends who were DJs. I went to university in Sheffield and they had a very good electronic music circuit happening. And that time, house music was having its resurgence as well, more like, tech house, deep house and so on. And Sheffield and England and Sheffield in general, they had a very big bass music scene, like, drum and bass, dubstep and so on. So through those influences, I got into DJing, learned on vinyl. And initial few months used to play drum and bass and mostly drum and bass, then kind of progressed to house and techno, so influences were there. Dabbled into production as well, to compose and so on, but I don't think I never really had the technical curiosity and the patience to really sit down and sort of do it. In fact, that time I'd met this friend of a friend who was in A&R at Virgin Records in London. And he had basically skipped university and he had just, he was our age at that time. He had progressed to sort of, A&Ring projects with Daft Punk. Were coming back with their album, I'm forgetting the name.
Random Access Memories?
The one that came in 2012 or 2011. Okay. And so, that really piqued my interest. I was like, what is this? And then, I'd search up a little bit more, sort of more on the music business side of things. I was already kind of assisting and working with a few friends to throw gigs because we had a big student culture, student nights and so on to sort of, book artists where I would sometimes open the night or close the night and, we would bring down artists that we'd like and make a little bit of extra cash. So that was it's all hobbying. It would pay for extra expenses and all that kind of stuff, but the business side of it kind of attracted me, but I never thought that it's something that I'd end up doing. Came back, or rather dropped out and came back home.
Dropped out?
Yeah, dropped out. I was studying physics,
Good
when you're out 5-6 nights a week and not really studying, you can't pull it through end of the term. So at one point I was like, okay, now let's just cut our losses and just go back home and see what is to be done with life. Was going to study law. I come from a family which has a few lawyers, and also was one of the things which piqued my interest. Uh, but back then in Delhi, so Delhi is where I'm originally from, I saw a bunch of electronic music artists coming down, and I had no idea about the music scene in India. I left when I was 18, which was in 2009, and I came back around 2013. I was like, okay, I had zero idea prior to that, beyond your Bollywood and what the indie music uh, uh, scene happened like in the late 90s. So I came back, I was like, wow, there's artists that I would see in England or Europe coming down, like let's check it out. Went to a few gigs, and then I ended up in a few months joining one of the companies that was organizing those in Delhi. It was a small agency, boutique agency in Delhi, which they should manage artists, tour artists, and so on. Started as a booking agent, operations sort of person. This was purely to supplement. I was like, okay, while I'm studying for law exams and all that, let's just sort of do this.
Oh, so you did do law exams?
I didn't get to the exam part. Because initially I thought this is okay, wow, this is just, help me pay for my living expenses, and so I don't have to depend on, family, and, just have a bit of fun along with it. But over time, it sort of, I thought, managed to get good at it. I figured that certain things came naturally to me with regards to sort of, a way of operating and sort of, just being able to work well with people, and influencing change. Ended up starting booking artists as well, so either being a booking agent and then further as an artist manager. Did that for like a couple of years. We'd come to Bombay a lot for gigs, then, work with brands, so on and so on. Figured out that if I really want to do this, and I always wanted to work at a label, and like if I wanted to do this, I should move to Mumbai. So I reached out to, couple of the major labels, also to this company, OML, who we would work with them a lot, but they were, doing NH7, Weekender, and they had probably the best independent artist lineup at that time, and plus of course all the stuff they were doing in comedy and content. So that was more of a multimedia sort of thing compared to a label. Didn't get an opportunity at a label. There was one which wanted to hire me, but in Delhi I was like, I think I felt very saturated in the city. I was like, the action is in Mumbai, I should move there. Then as it happened, OML had just they were revamping their artist management team and the music sort of artist roster as well, and yeah, I ended up joining them in 2017. And when I joined them, they were sort of we were looking to get more artists in. Before joining, I had recommended to Vijay, who had interviewed me, that you should look at Desi hip hop, because that's something. My introduction to Desi hip hop was from two artists, Sikandar Kalu and Divine. Right, and till this date they're still in my obviously for obvious reasons also, but for as a fan, they're both in my top 5, top 3. I'd recommended that he sort of get him on, because I'd booked him in Delhi for a show in my previous job, and the show was horrible, but kind of that's how we connected first, back in 2016.
2017, the show?
So 16 was the show. This was like a few months after Jungli Sher had come out. And then 2017 is when I joined OML. And when I joined there, they told me that, we're already sort of, talking to him, and then we'll close it soon. Ended up sort of, closing, getting him on board at OML, and then signed a couple of more artists, and then I was assigned certain artists as well to manage. And yeah, did that for a while, and then figured, how the space, the hip-hop sort of movement was taking momentum as well. For me, at the heart of it was still, eventually, I want to work at a label. My goal was I'll work here 3 years and then start something. And I think within a space of a year and a half, we had a very good understanding, me and Divine, and we thought, okay, let's try this. Gully Gang as a brand was always with him. Initially it was known as the sort of artist that used to play with him, or the crew that he used to hang with. It had many connotations. uh, and but it was a brand which just stuck with him, and then resonated across. And then of course Gully Boy came out,
Yeah.
and that kind of took it to another level. We thought we want to run a label, sign artists, develop artists, sort of push forward the sound, and also look at things like content, fashion, and so on. A model which is very common in hip hop, when artists sort of take off. It's very common for them to pave the way for others,
Yeah.
more so in hip hop than any other genre, right? So that's what inspired us, and we thought let's try a hand at it. So 2019, we have turned Gully Gang into a company, and the goal was record label, content, fashion / merch,
Yeah.
and so on. We've been doing that since.
This was 2019.
Yes, we complete 4 years. I think next month.
Wow. What were the initial days like? Like what was the first few months, the first big thing that you guys did?
See, the initial days was very consumed. This was right in that Gully Boy release period. I think it was one of those films which kind of took the entire country by storm. Also because of how Ranveer, he lived that character for like a good couple of years leading up to it, right? And
Sorry, what?
He's still living it.
Yeah.
and that I think really helped in that creating that sort of buzz towards it. And then of course Zoya did like a incredible job with the film. It was great how they involved the rap community,
Yeah.
and right from some of the younger boys to some of the more sort of
Yeah.
established ones. And yeah, the in that period it was very hectic. Firstly, I was trying to come to grips with like, okay, wow, this is how to run a company. We were in that phase of recruiting the core team, which was actually people who were working with us for a while but as freelancers, but sort of getting them in, and also sort of signing artists which we had been having, we already identified months back, and it was more about closing. The first official release on the label for us was the Cypher, Gully Gang Cypher,
Yeah.
which is actually a song, which is technically not a cypher, is when you're in a circle and
Yeah.
you're going one after the other. It was a song, but it had that sort of vibe to it, and we felt it was quite a good introduction to the artist roster that we wanted to push at that time. So that was, I would say, the first project that we started with, and yeah.
Gully Boy. Man, that movie and that soundtrack.
Yeah.
I have that on vinyl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a fab album to have.
So I think Ankur did a very good job, on the soundtrack, curating it with the producers, with the artists, with the rappers, and even Javed Akhtar penned down a few tracks. So it was an incredible mix of people, and yeah, I keep going back to the soundtrack a lot as well. So it has that.
It really does.
It
And
has that
just
sort of
so
shelf value.
diverse. Just within that album, there's so much diversity in the songs. But yeah, man, like Gully Boy just killed it. That
It did.
And it had a lot of Gully Gang like artists in the thing as well, right?
Yes.
Those scenes where they're having
Those rap battles.
rap
Yeah.
battles. Yeah, that was so fun.
I think 3 of our artists are there. So yeah.
Yeah, Sharul was there.
Shah was there, D-Evil, MC Altaf.
Yeah.
They were all there in that.
Yeah. That was damn funny. All right. So, Gully Boy releases. That, of course, amplifies things for you guys.
Yes.
You said you hired people who were freelancers that would work for you. So, I'm assuming this more on the production side of things?
This was initially on the content and creative side. It was more me sort of heading forward the business end of it, and then getting the right creatives in place. And these were people who were, working with initially with Divine, and then with us for years. So that right from the person who made the Gully Gang logo.
Yeah.
He himself used to be a rapper. He's actually still now is coming back as a rapper as well.
What's his name?
His name is Panini. His artist name is Afkap, AFKAP. So he was studying design in New York, and I think he was 16, 17 when he made
Wow, really?
this logo.
That
yeah.
logo's fab.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah. He would pick out a few technical flaws in it now.
Yeah.
Now he's done his studies and has that experience. But yeah, it's stuck. It has that resonance to it, the diamond logo
Yeah.
that we have. Um, so he sort of came on as our designer, creative sort of lead of sorts, and then JD, who had been producing and directing videos with Divine from right from the start, he sort of came on as for leading content. So that was the initial core team, and then we started sort of adding on to it from there.
So we all know that Gully Gang is sabse hard parivar, but who all are in the parivar? What's the artist roster? Any other people?
So Parivar, that moniker, it's not just for say the artist roster.
Yeah.
It's also more for the fan base,
Yeah.
right? So it kind of is something that unites people who sort of associate with the music, relate with the artist, relate with what we're trying to do. As far as the artist roster, right now we have MC Altaf, who's from Bombay, D-Evil, of course, Sharul,
Yeah.
Sumayoki from Goa. There's some Mohit from Bombay again. There's Riyar Saab, formerly known as Frenzy. He used to be a part of this group Avruti. Then later now he sort of we discovered he could sing in a few in this songwriting camp we
Yeah.
did a while back, and like, okay, wow, he's like naturally gifted in certain things, so why not do some pop leaning music. So we've been developing him for a while. Then there is D King from Madhya Pradesh, in fact Jabalpur.
Wow.
This 15-year-old kid who we just discovered through a song I think last year, and it kind of just blew our mind. I was like, there's something this kid will do, let's just try to sort of get him in.
So is he in Bombay now?
He's based in Jabal. He's completing a school. He's got bigger priorities than music at the moment. So yeah, it's a more of a long-term sort of a long-term sort of thought process with an artist like him. Generally with artists and developing artists, it has to be a more long-term process, but in this case it's a lot more, because it's about doing the first prerequisites in life, and also maturing as a person. So yeah, with him it's low pressure, let him sort of take his time, and let him sort of do how he wants to do things. And then we also have 100 RBH, which is actually Saurabh. It's like 100 RBH, Saurabh.
Okay.
Right, his name is Saurabh. He's from this city called Amravati, and he's also sort of doing some incredible things. So that's our that's the rappers that are there on our roster, rappers / singers. Then we have Karan Kanchan, who's a music producer, composer, also an artist. He's been doing incredible stuff, and in fact he has a huge few months ahead, a lot of collaborations and music coming out. He's the one who produced Bazigar.
Dude, that Basigar, man. Also that bass line on Basigar.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Also Satya, if you heard the bass line on Satya.
Yeah.
Like, I still remember listening to it for the first time, when the first scratches come, the demos come, they're not mixed or mastered. But even at that time, I was like, wow, this bass slaps, right? So, you just know, like, sometimes when you hear a track, okay, this is a hit.
Yeah.
So,
I want to come to Basigar in some time, because that has just been, again, phenomenal.
yeah, that has a few backstories to it. And then there's also Stana, who's, if you've heard the track 359 AM, he's the one who produced that.
Nice.
Amongst, obviously, a lot of others.
Yeah.
And then we have DJ Proof, who's our sort of, you could say, label DJ. Plays, obviously, on his own as well, then with a bunch of our artists also. So, yeah, I think that sort of summarizes most of the roster. There's also JD, who, when he's not occupied with producing videos, every now and then he does a gig as well. So,
Fun.
But yeah.
Also the energy, man, at a Gully Gang concert or a Divine concert, right? I've attended a few. One was the Andheri East one at Lalit, I think.
Oh, in May.
Yeah. And I think when you say parivar, right, and you were talking about that moniker being for everyone was singing every lyric to every song.
Yeah.
And that was just so, like, the energy was just crazy.
That was in normal circumstances, we wouldn't have done a show in May in 45 degrees in Bombay, right? Especially an outdoor one. But we hadn't been able to do a show for since I think 2019 December. And 2021 we had tried. Then, just when a few shows started after the pandemic didn't subside, but it sort of, had one of its few quieter months. We missed that timing, very badly. Like, there were people who did shows in November, we were doing in December, and right then Omicron and
Yeah.
that all that stuff started coming in, so we had to cancel that. So it was, the fans were starved, right, for a while, especially home turf. So we thought, okay, we have to make something happen. So we did like this small run of shows in the summer of 2022, starting with Bombay. So in fact, that was one we produced, with a few partners, and because we like, one way or the other we have to get it done.
Yeah.
So it was glad to have that sort of,
And that NSCI one,
yeah.
that I couldn't make it for that, but uh, the videos that came out, like, that was chock-a-block, right?
I didn't see 80% of the set. Like, I spent at the start of the set, I just went in for the entrance because we planned this grand entrance as well, and I saw the crowd. I was like, okay, wow, the rafters are full. This is full. My job here is done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go backstage and just chill for a bit. NSCI one, we really put a lot of work into it. Our idea was, how can we make with the new album coming in for Divine, how can we sort of give the grandest experience to fans, and and launch the project in a way which is remembered. So I think in that way we did achieve those objectives. A lot of work goes into producing shows, and it really consumes your life. In fact, especially when we produced like 4-5 shows in the store, and some sort of were produced by others, but it just takes over everything. So a lot of learnings. In fact, we were very I would say apprehensive of going back into producing shows, because
Yeah.
we'd done one for his first album, and we made some. The show went well, but we, on the business side, we'd made some calls which were naive at that time. But what changed after the pandemic was, especially for the live industry, I say after the pandemic because I'm assuming it's kind of
Done with.
out of the way.
Yeah.
But like, the live industry changed in a way because the ticket buying culture just went through the roof, even for at different levels. Whereas prior to that, I think, apart from, unless you have an established festival brand or a IP which is been doing stuff for a few years, your ratio of sponsorship to ticketing would always be very heavily in
Yeah.
favor of sponsorship. But I think post pandemic it's come a lot closer to say a 50-50 kind of ratio, and in some cases even ticketing is going higher. There's a premium segment which has been working well also. So that changed, and then we thought, okay, how can we not make the mistakes of last time, and then sort of build upon it. So took a few months of planning and executing, and then the whole team sort of did very well.
From that Andheri's thing, I remember there was a big picture of Divine, and you could see his AP so clearly on his wrist in that thing. And then you look at that, and then you look at the NSCI gig, right? As co-founder and CEO of the company, right? I want to talk about your day-to-day job. What does that entail? But when you look at moments like these, right, there is that certain establishment has happened now, like certain something has been achieved. How does that feel? Did you guys see it would blow up like this, like 4 years back?
No, but we were always very ambitious, right from the start, and even prior to starting the company, right, leading up to, say, a lot of people ask if Gully Boy, gave you like rocket fuel to sort of, what I would say to that is, for a lot of artists, they were already building, like, especially in our case with Divine, we were already building
Yeah.
towards it. like the year prior, Kaam Pachis was like the biggest song
Yeah.
of the year. A lot of people don't know it's not in the soundtrack for Sacred Games. It was made as a promotional track for Sacred Games, but it did so well that people associate
Yeah.
that with the series and the series with that now.
I do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and even if you ask at Netflix, I think they're also. I don't think any other sort of similar thing has replicated the kind of success which it had in our case as of yet. And so there were a lot of other sort of milestones that were already there, and what Gully Boy for us I think did, and generally for hip hop in India, was it took it wider, right? It took it the awareness to, initially where it would be more to your metro cities and so on. It took it much wider than that, and so that even your average sort of person is aware of, okay, there's this movement. It kind of gave it a more, I would say, national tick mark.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a legitimate thing that is happening in this country, right? Rather than like some very underground movement. Then slowly towards from that, with everything that we did, with Divine as an artist or with the company, the idea was always to go one level above with everything. And it gets harder the higher you go.
Yeah.
How do you,
How do you one up?
how do you do one up for something which you thought, was incredible itself? So I would say we're not very, it's very grateful, of course, and blessed to be here. But the ambition is still there to do more.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to do. I think for him as an artist as well, where he wants to do and explore sort of different areas beyond music as well, right? And with respect to the company, for us it's always about, we need to want to put out great music, keep pushing artists, produce amazing content, and also now what we're also going to do is look a lot more into live experiences. So maybe a festival or something that might come forth
That's
soon.
exciting.
Yeah.
What's your day-to-day job? Because when you think of Gully Gang, you don't think of a CEO at all. You just think that everyone's having fun and rapping and pumping things out.
Well, I try to manage the chaos. So it's evolved really, for most of the part, I've been playing the dual role of managing Divine and also sort of running the company, and it's not easy to do both, of course, and on the company side, a lot of my time goes towards firstly finance. As CEO, I think the first job is to ensure the company has sufficient capital, for you to sort of do your operations and projects and everything else that you need to do. So securing that in a larger sense, right? That may not be a more day-to-day thing, but it's a more sort of top three for a CEO. And then how that capital is deployed. So that sort of goes into it as well. Sometimes to get involved in some creative development, but I think there's much more expert people that are there in the company to sort of work on that. And generally a lot of problem solving. I think 80% of my job is problem solving.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
It's either when someone's stuck in a problem, or they don't see a way ahead, or people are at loggerheads. It just happens in a minute case as well, and sometimes these balloon to larger situations also. So a lot of the time sort of goes towards that. So I try to make myself available to the team as much as possible. But then also you're having business development meetings. You're having, you're meeting all sorts of people, trying to see what more you can do. So a lot of things go towards it. I would love to have a less busy calendar and just have time to do nothing. But alas, we didn't choose that life.
In our case, in Swami's case, so we're three partners, and the CEO is my brother-in-law, one of my co-founders. And I was very clear, this company, I'm not becoming the CEO. Let Sile do that, day-to-day management. So many things to look after, man. You spoke about capital. How's that been, though? Is it all fully funded? Have you guys raised money?
We haven't as of yet. It's been, bootstrapped since, and plus, we've all had a few joint venture partnerships on the label front, on the publishing front. The idea was to sort of, to race a few years back, but then the pandemic happened. And when the pandemic happened, it was very difficult from the perspective, okay, wow, we literally not even completed a year, and now we're in this thing which no one has ever faced before, right? And I still remember 3 months, it was those 3 months like, okay, wow, like this story is like never heard of.
Yeah.
And so we went into more of a survival mode at that time. While we did creative projects, which, did very well, the idea was, as a lot of ambitions we had, let's sort of, be a little more careful about things and take the more long-term view. And, at some point we'll come out of this and a lot of other things will normalize.
Yeah.
As a result of it, what also ended up happening, we ended up doing a lot more brand work, especially because live wasn't happening, and that obviously helped, which is sort of led to us now expanding to that area in very different ways as well. But so yeah, that until this point we've been bootstrapped, and for the future, let's see what happens. At some point, a company like ours has to raise capital to sort of grow to where we want to see. Our ambitions are, we don't consider ourselves just as a label or as a content or a merch company. We want to be a multimedia sort of company which is impacting culture.
Yeah.
Right? Youth culture specifically. And for that you need more resources.
Yeah.
And at some point I see us securing the right partnership. In our case, unlike a lot of say tech companies, or this, it's not a case of say raising VC money. It's more about raising strategic money, because you'd want whoever you're adding to the board to be able to sort of also guide you towards where you want to sort of reach. So people usually who that would come in a similar sphere. So that's how we see it.
We'll take a short little break, and when we come back, I want to get into the latest album, Divine's latest album, and those backstories you were telling me about Bazigar.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to IVM Podcast. Here's what we have got in store for you this week. Listeners, presenting to you Club Cyrus Says, the premier tier offering for our podcast. Club members will get exclusive Cock and Bull episodes every Monday, extended and unfiltered versions of the guest episodes, access to the Club Cyrus Says Discord server, audio offerings such as ad-free episodes, and early access to the guest episodes. Also, members get to decide the topics of the live episodes and get their names on the producer slates at the end credits. So go to youtube.com/@Cyrus Says and click on the join button to become a member now. On How to Citizen, Meghnad and Shreyas talk to Marouk Inayat, journalist, news anchor and managing partner at Studio Talk. They talk about how women are changing the world. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita talk about the presence of FMCG giants online and Mark Zuckerberg's letter to his employees. And on The Wire Talks, Siddharth talks to environmental scientist Dr. Anju Goyal about air quality and the role of air purifiers. Once again, do not forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We've got some super cool and exciting stuff up there for you and your loved ones. Follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, then do not forget to spread the word. It really helps us a lot. And of course, don't forget to rate and review our shows on whatever platform you are listening to them. All our video shows are also available on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: LIC of India, Yono SBI, Cash Free Payments, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you so much for making this possible.
All right, we're back on the niche thing. I've got Chaitanya with me, co-founder and CEO of Gully Gang. We were gonna get into Bazigar. Actually, I want to talk about the album, and I mentioned this earlier also. Like, the production quality that comes out of Gully Gang is spectacular. Who are the people responsible for this? Because it's really, really commendable. Tell me a little bit about the album, and then tell me about Bazigar. How did that happen? How do you guys even get the rights to sample it, or the whole journey?
Okay, so production for us from the very beginning was, a very important facet of how to shape the sound that we want to put out. In hip hop, what you tend to get is a lot of people are incredible rappers. Some may be incredible songwriters as well, in addition to that. But not a lot of people are able to construct something from scratch which has a long shelf life. For that, the music is often neglected a lot, I feel. So the production, the lyrics, the sort of the songwriting, all of it, even the mixing and mastering, those are things that we sort of focus on a lot. Those shape how ultimately it's consumed, right? You have to look at it from a perspective of uh, you're not just putting out your creation. It's also you have to think from perspective of how it's going to be consumed by people, looking at the UX aspect of it, if you will. So from the very start, we knew that we need to have, very strong producers in our camp. And then, of course, producers that we work with outside the roster. Like, we need to sort of, curate that very well for our artists. So Karan Kanchan and Stana, they've, Karan came on much earlier, I think 2-3 months after we started the company. Karan's been like the backbone. He's, produced for the entire roster. I would say between Karan and Stana, they probably would have produced a good 60-70% of our catalog overall.
How old are these guys?
So Karan's about 25, 26, I think. And Stana is slightly older than him, I think. But yeah, so, and both of them have sort of grown, over the years as well. And it's incredible to see what they've been doing. How Gunegar came about. So obviously we had Kohinoor that had come for Divine in 2019, and then Punyapap, which had come in 2020. The difference being Kohinoor, we had actually been making Kohinoor from a much longer time in 2018. In fact, the idea was at that time to drop it in 2018, but then took more time, and the title track Kohinoor itself was made in somewhere like April 2019. And then it sort of, really took shape, and then we put it out, and, obviously that's a very special album, for me personally as well. And then Punyapap, the idea for that came a few months after Kohinoor. And the line, the Punyapap, has also come from the song Kohinoor, Abhi bhi karte Punya, Abhi bhi karte Pap. And that was made on a much shorter sort of, space of time. And that had this very special song, 359 AM, which sample, which is originally from this track, was used in Voice of the Streets, which is more of a sort of a mixtape track. Mixtape, when you usually use an uncleared beat or uncleared sample, and you don't release it on audio streaming, but it's on YouTube, in at least the Indian context. So we thought at some point, okay, wow, we'll do a Hindi version of Voice of the Streets or use the sample again. And that got cleared, like, I think just 2 weeks before the release of the album. But I'm glad it did, because then it went on to do. The video just touched 200 million views on YouTube, which is incredible for me because the track has no hook, like there's no chorus, for example, and it's a pure lyrical hip hop track. And we put zero marketing towards it, zero marketing monies, right? So for me, how quickly it grew and how steadily it's kept, it's sort of, it's that's a big win, I feel. And still surprised by how, in a pleasant way, of course, how well it's done. Then last year, in 2021, the idea for Gunegar came out. It wasn't called Gunegar at that time. Because he wanted to take a bit of a break, from the whole album release cycle, and then sort of, take a little time to sort of work on things. And slowly it came about. The track Gunegar actually was made, I think, somewhere in 2022 summer. So it's a lot of times artists tend to have, say, names for projects, and then they make a theme. Sometimes you make music and you realize, okay, this is going in a certain sort of theme, or certain sort of, there's a couple of things which resonate throughout different tracks. So that's when the idea of Gunegar came about. That's how rather Gunegar shaped up rather. And Bazigar. So Bazigar as a track was initially made in 2021.
How do you guys keep it to yourselves for so long?
I had actually made a big mistake then. We actually got clearance for that right then. And then I thought, okay, there's no immediate timeline to release. We'll finish the paperwork when, we have actually planned to release it. Biggest mistake ever. Because then the rights holder we had to clear it from, they had changed sort of, certain sort of business policies. And then when we went back to them last year, 2022, and like, we cannot do it. So I was like, okay, wow, this is a incredible track. It we feel that it'll be one of the highlights from the album. We have to figure out a way to sort of do this. So I think a few months of going back at it, and in fact the month prior to the album, I was hounding them every day. It was just like, I will call you every day until you give up and give this.
But what was it? Was
to
the
us.
money thing? Was it?
So sampling as a concept in the West, like hip hop was made on sampling, right? On jazz, blues, and sort of samples from yesteryear, especially all the stuff that came in the 90s, and of course beyond it. So it was very common, and it's clearing and publishing, music rights, it's protected, and it's a lot more, I would say, market friendly in terms of of course there are layers of creative approvals also. Not everything is cleared, but the mechanism for it and the precedence for it is very common. However, in India, sampling as a concept is not there at all. Labels tend to, especially the more traditional labels, they tend to keep the IP, and if anything is sort of being made like a remix or a sort of a revive or whatever these terms are there, they tend to sort of get released from within that label. So if you're releasing either as an artist independently or through another label, getting stuff from X is very different. Is very difficult to be released from Y. It's kind of strange because if there's an artist from the West who's trying to do it, or a label from the West, they tend to get clearances, but then they have to pay top dollar for it also. But it's more of a business practice, because I think it's about not giving your competition or sort of a strategic advantage over certain things. I hope that it would change over time, because I feel sampling can really take this movement, and generally music, to like another level. And plus it also, especially in the era of streaming, it gives a new life to the old original track as well, right? So it's a win-win. And plus if you have sort of skin in the game in said new track as well, then it's and it does well, it can become a big win. So they were apprehensive about a few things, and then eventually the sample got cleared. And it, of course, in corporate companies, there's multiple layers of approvals, many stakeholders. It got cleared, I think, 4 days before the album was going to happen.
And if it hadn't?
There was no choice. There really was no choice. I was like, okay, this has to happen. I was like, there was no plan B. I had a full panic situation a week before, because we announced the album date, everything. We're still doing the mixes and masters. Usually it's very common for you to release, not common, it's rather the best practice, is to ingest your albums and so on and music 3-4 weeks before it comes out. In hip-hop, I'll be honest, it happens very rarely, because there's a lot of things which end up going last minute. But we were hoping that we could have given it to platforms and so on, and they can sort of do their thing in time. But yeah, alas, it didn't happen. And this track, it was a choice. Okay, wow, there was this track and another track, that do we release it without them? And then the sound is going to be incomplete. It's not going to complete what we're trying to sort of put out. And there really was no like plan B. I remember having a full blown panic situation. It's like, wow, like what the hell are we going to do in a week? This is going to drop. There's so many expectations, etc. And but yeah, just somehow we were just persistent, And I think if you're persistent and reasonable enough, and you try to sort of create business opportunities which also show the other party that they can win from this, I think you can get through everything. Like, I would say almost everything in the world is negotiable. As long as it doesn't defy the laws of the land or laws of physics, you can get by with a lot of things.
True CEO speak. So this album comes out, and you drop the video for Bazigar as well.
Yes.
That's the first video from the album?
No. The first video was Gunegar, because that was a single that had was a pre-album single. Then there was Akela, and then after Gunegar, the album release on audio, we also released Bonfire, which is a collaboration with us.
Of course.
Yeah. In fact, I think had the sample gotten cleared much earlier, then probably Bajigar video would have been, the one to come with the album. But we didn't want to spend money on a video not knowing, okay, wow, this thing is getting cleared or not. I still remember we were doing the final masters. It was 4 a.m. on Tuesday, which was I think 8th of November. And 10th November, the album was going to drop, right? So we're like, okay, now this is done. Bajigar is there. This was the last track that got mastered. Like, okay, just send it. If there's any changes, we'll figure later.
Yeah.
Let's just now get done with it and put it out. But yeah, albums really take a lot out of artists and their teams. Because you're putting together a body of work. It's not about just putting out a song or a video. You're putting out a body of work which you're wondering how will your fans react, what will not necessarily what will the critics will say, but a body of works tend to get judged a lot more than and they define in my opinion they define the story of an artist, right? So it's a very different way of, it's almost like putting together a film, right? A feature film together. So yeah.
How long did the Bajigar video take? Because that video is also fab.
Take to make much longer than we wanted it to, because it had a lot of VFX and CGI work. I think we shot the video sometime in December, and the post-production was very extensive, so that took a while, and that eventually sort of came out, I think, in Feb.
And how did the video idea come about? Like, what were the first inklings to go in this direction?
So we were looking at, how there were a lot of very ambitious ideas also, which I cannot delve into. But
come on, give us something.
There was a cameo or so on of a certain someone that was, being planned as well. But for a variety of reasons, it did not happen. But the idea came about, we were just taking in concepts and, Rima, who we've worked with before for a few videos as well, she'd sort of, shared an idea, which then it was developed, and then, like, okay, let's do this. Flew down Armani White from New York for it. I think we shot just after Christmas. And yeah. It was the pre-production time. I don't think we gave the team enough pre-production time because we wanted to just get done with it, release it ASAP. But I think everyone did a good job there.
It's really good. I was just checking the stats today. It's been a month on YouTube, 11 million views.
Yeah,
pretty cool. What's this year looking like for you guys? What's
a lot of interesting things. I think from our camp we want to release more albums with a lot of our developing and younger talent. They've been primarily releasing, singles and so on. But I think for a few of them, the time is there to now delve into sort of, releasing albums to define that, putting out body of works is very important. I think that will be there on the agenda. Then, of course, we're always looking at new music opportunities, new artists to do things with. And from a content perspective, we're, looking at a few interesting things, a few projects that are going to come out and are being developed as well. And then, we'll see what we can do more on the live side of things.
What's happening on the merch side of stuff, and how does that business look?
So the merch side has always for us been very initially it was more just traditional merch as you call it, which is just your logo and different kind of things, and you put that out. That from the very start, even prior to the company being officially started, was doing well because of how the brand name and the brand identity was very resonant. And then at one point we thought, okay, how do we make it appeal to also people who maybe not be fans, but they're into streetwear or they're into sort of, drip, as they say. So that gave idea to, a different way of designing sort of, and slightly moving away from calling it merch, just, purely going into a more fashion side of things. And so we released these oversized sort of collection last year called Gully Gang Parivar, and like different colors, which was a big success.
I missed out on that.
Yeah? Oh, I think that was the first time we released anything with multicolor
Yeah.
sort of things. I was also came from the ideas like, why do we always make things just black on black on black,
Yeah.
right? In a country like India, people don't wear black that much, right? It's not really a color of choice for most people. So you wanted to sort of just make it a little more vibrant and a lot more fun, So that did very well. And since then it's just been more from a perspective of, I would say, hype drops every quarter or so. Uh, there are plans to sort of scale this side of things. We want to sort of do it properly and do it well, because we have obviously a label, content, everything. It's very hard to scale as you would know, all at the same time.
Yeah.
So each of it has this different trajectory to sort of do, and of course the right partnerships to make that happen as well.
Cool. Anything else you want to tell me about Gully Gang, about any stuff people should know?
I think I've covered quite a bit.
Yeah, we've got pretty much.
Yeah, we've
a lot
covered
of
quite a
stuff.
bit.
Yeah.
If we're asked to talk more, I think we can go on talking for a while.
Yeah, but pretty cool, man. So good to have you on the show.
It's been fun.
And I'm looking forward to the future stuff.
Thanks, Aneesh.